Of course, at the Evolutionary Astrology Network, you can study with us 4 different ways. You can listen to our weekly podcast, join our, subscribe to our Astro Library, or become a registered student and even pursue certification. Our Astro Library here offers 3 different sections of materials. This is about 12 years accumulation of various audio, video files, and some transcripts of things that we have. You can join 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, or do a monthly recurring that can be canceled at any time. Go to our website for more information on that. We have 3 segments to our multimedia course. You see them there in front of you, as well as a listing of all of the materials that come with each segment of the course. Webinar classes are taking place every month for segments 1 and 2. If you're interested in a course, you'd like to see what a class sample is like, you can email us for an actual sample, and we'll send you an entire class of your choice from either segment 1 or segment 2. And as we move into this fall, we have put a $50 coupon on these course segments. You will enter the word course, capital C-O-U-R-S-E, at the checkout to get the $50 discount, and this includes segment 3 as well.
And you can use it for
Leroy, comment.
You can also use that for multiple segments. So it's $50 per segment. You can use it for multiple segments.
Well, thank you. Didn't know that detail. And we'll run this beyond the Mercury retrograde. So those of you who are looking, well, I'm not going to buy when Mercury's going retrograde. Yes, I understand that. But we just wanted to get the announcement of it out as we started into some of these fall classes. And so you can wait through Mercury's retrograde passage if you are interested in joining our class segments. Here are the classes that we are going to have. And when you see the modality, we'll do the 3 modalities through the month of October, and then we'll move through the 4 elements during November and December. You'll get the PDF slides of this afterwards, so you'll be able to have this listing to know when the future classes are going to be. And so this class is entitled the Cardinal Modality, and so we will work with understanding exactly what this is through the course of the next couple of hours. One thing I'd like to point out for anybody who may be new to evolutionary astrology, we look at a sign, its natural house, and its planetary ruler as a single archetype in consciousness. For example, the sign Aries and its natural affinity to the first house of the zodiac, and the ruler Mars. Mars rules Aries by sign. It rules the first house by location. All of those are one archetype in consciousness. What we have found over the last 3-4 decades is that astrology, for the most part, has become very humanistic or psychologically based. Evolutionary astrology is a spiritually based astrology, but it as well is very psychologically based. And so an archetype in consciousness can have a spectrum of interpretation. But most astrology, I wouldn't say all, but much in the astrology world has come to recognize that Aries in the first house are interchangeable. It's not that there's a definition to Aries and there's a different definition to the first house and a different definition to Mars. There are some that still look at it that way, but I think more and more through that astrological world, astrologers are starting to recognize these 12 basic archetypes in consciousness. And so in many ways, for students of astrology, this can become a simplification then. You just learn these 12 basic archetypes, and it'll take you a long ways in getting past confusion between signs, houses, planets. You still will have to blend those 3 together when you have a sign on one house and a planet in there as well. You still will do the interpretation or the blending of those archetypes, but again, there is a very strong foundation to learning the basics of the 12 archetypes. And this is one of the things that I intend to help you do, learn, interpret, blend through looking at these modalities and elements. Now, these 12 archetypes of the zodiac, one of the most basic ways in which we can learn to put one of those archetypes together or interpret is understanding that division of the circle, that astrological circle of 12 archetypes. We understand that through the division of the circle by 2, 3, and 4. Now, it can be divided by more than those 3 numbers, but those are 3 basic divisions that we work with, and they are sometimes known as the harmonics of the numbers, and I'll show you some example here. But when you looking at dividing the circle by 2, you have the polarities, 3 modalities, 4 elements, and those of you who study with EA know that when we divide the circle by 8, we have the 8 phases. And you can actually take the numbers 1 through 12 and divide up the circle, and that's going to give you the total of all the aspects. If you want more detail on that cycle of phases and aspects, I have done webinars on that in segment 1 of our multimedia course, and you can refer to that, just like these types of classes right here. Excuse me, taking my sweater off, everyone. All right, got that done. And so when we look at the harmonics of the circle, the harmonics of 1 is when there's no division of the circle. There's no beginning, there's no end. It just goes on and on and on. The harmonics of 1 would be the aspect of a conjunction in astrology. When we now divide that circle in half, or divide it by 2, the harmonics of 2, what we get in astrology is that we will take those 12 archetypes and divide them up into what we call the 2 polarities. Here's a slide on the polarities. As you look at the salmon-colored one, you see that we have all of the odd-numbered houses and their corresponding signs, and they're all yang or outward moving energy. I have a tendency to say active, passive. And I had this slide made up for me, and I didn't bother to change it because I think the words are interchangeable, but you will hear me saying active for energy moving outward from the center. And you'll hear me say passive for yin or inward energy moving back towards the center, which is the blue circle of what you will see with all of the even numbered houses and their corresponding signs. And so we'll weave the polarities together with the modalities and the elements through these 7 classes that we're going to do. And you can refer back to these slides as you need to. We can also take that circle and divide it by 3. We divide it into thirds. And with astrology, what we will do then with those 12 archetypes, dividing it into thirds, we come up with the 3 modalities. And here is a slide showing you the different modalities that we have here. And so you can see at the top, the cardinal modality is Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. You see the list there. You can look at the fixed modality. You can look at the mutable modality and see how those all, when you're looking at modalities, what you're going to start to see is that one modality, for instance, cardinal, you've got 2 modalities opposite each other squared by 2 other modalities that are opposite each other, and yet they will all fall into the one modality as a group, either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. I'm going through the astronomy right now. We'll get to the interpretation, okay? I just want to give you the astronomy, as I call it, or the math. We also will take the harmonics of 4 and divide a circle into quarters or 1/4. And in astrology, when we divide those 12 archetypes into 4, we get the 4 elements. And here is your slide that shows you all of the 4 elements: fire, earth, air, water, with their corresponding signs. And you can also look at the modalities, elements, and polarities via the natural houses as well. Because again, Aries first house, interchangeable archetype, just like Virgo and the 6th house, interchangeable archetype. The 4 elements, I thought I'd put this in here for you as well, rather than waiting until our 4th class before we look at this. Many of you will know this from some of your basics of astrology. The fire element is spiritual. The earth element is physical, air element is mental, and the water element is emotional. What we are going to work with, though, tonight is this cardinal modality. And so here's the glyph, or the circle of these 4 archetypes by sign, and of course with their corresponding house numbers. So what are modalities? Modalities are basically a mode of action. Elements are a temperament. Modalities are how we act, how we move, a mode of action. And as you can see, let me back up here. When we're looking at the cardinal modality, we are initiating. When we look at the fixed modality, we're sustaining. When we look at the mutable modality, we are adapting. And we'll go into that in more detail, but those are key words that have come to be pretty universal with these 3 modalities. So understanding this, that the modalities are a mode of action or a quality of action or how we act. Are we going to initiate actions? Are we going to sustain actions? Or are we going to adapt actions? Those are those 3 modalities. When we are looking at this cardinal modality, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, what you will start to see here, blending in the polarities and the elements, is that 2 signs or 2 archetypes of the cardinal modality are active, energy moving outward from the center, and that's Aries and Libra. And 2 archetypes of the cardinal modality are the passive polarity, energy moving back to the center, and those are the archetypes of Cancer and Capricorn. And when we look at the cardinal modality through the elements, you will see we have 1 of each element. Aries is fire, Cancer's water, Libra's air, and Capricorn is earth. Now this slide right here, just being able to understand polarity, energy moving inward or energy moving outward, modality, the quality of how we are going to take action, elements, a temperament. Just those 3 right there, polarity, modality, and element, all come together to then create what you would know as a foundation for interpreting any one of the 12 archetypes. And sometimes with astrology, we can get so caught up in words and phrases that we will associate with certain signs or archetypes of the zodiac. We forget where the words and phrases come from. And they come from this foundation of dividing the circle by 2, 3, and 4. Polarity, modality, and element. And so what I want to then go through with you tonight is we're going to look at all 4 of these archetypes from the perspective of their modality, cardinal. Basically, cardinal is initiation. It's new beginnings. That cardinal modality can many times just be racing forward in life. One of the things you've heard about the cardinal modality is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Well, cardinal is an energy that's always wanting to move forward, initiate. What happens, though, is that as we're moving forward, those 2 steps forward, we reach this point where we're going into unknown territory and we get insecure. And then we have a tendency to stop and back up a little bit until we've established the new. As we move through the 3 modalities, you're going to see how cardinal, fixed, and mutable all interrelate to each other as well. And we'll revisit the 3 modalities through the elements, and then it'll really come together when you take the earth element and you have cardinal, fixed, and mutable earth with archetypes. But again, one of the basics to learn about that cardinal energy is there's a momentum to go forward. However, it brings with it insecurity because we're going in a direction we haven't been yet. And so there's a push-pull, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Now the cardinal modality brings with it a certain amount of impulsiveness, instigation, inauguration. As you start to look at some of these words as an archetype, what you start to again recognize is there's momentum, there's energy, there's action to go forward. So cardinal, many times, are always the ones making the first move. So if you look at a planet and it's in a cardinal sign or a cardinal house, or it's in both a cardinal sign and house, that is going to be a planetary archetype or a principle within the consciousness of the soul that's always wanting to move, that's always wanting to change, that's wanting to go forward. Cardinal energy brings with it excitement and enthusiasm. We're excited to go forward, at least until we get insecure. But there is an energy of just what's around the corner, what's around the bend, what's next, let's go, let's move forward. And so that excitement and enthusiasm is something that this cardinal modality brings to life. And we're all going to have all 4 of these signs in our chart. So we're all going to have these areas where we aren't stuck fixed modality, where we are wanting to move forward, where we're first in line, where we're the instigator, where we're the one that is moving things forward. We're all going to have the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses in our chart as well. So if you in your own chart have planets in these 4 cardinal signs or in the cardinal houses, 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, those planetary archetypes are initiating. moving things forward, creating change. This is the leading edge of evolution when we're working with that cardinal modality. By the way, anytime anybody has questions or anything, you're more than welcome to speak up. If you hit the orange arrow and open up your menu, you will see where there is a Q&A board. Leroy is running the Q&A board. If he doesn't know the question, he'll ask it of me. And yet, what I suspect is that this is a pretty simple concept to understand when we're looking at these modalities and the quality of actions that they bring with them. So, moving forward, let's look at this archetype of Aries through the cardinal modality. What we again see that we have here is also within Aries is the active polarity, energy moving out from the center, and the fire element, that spiritual archetype or temperament that's going to come through. So with Aries, the cardinal energy, looking at that polarity and element, that cardinal energy gets really excited. It gets explosive, feisty, all over the place. And so can you now see some of those, just looking at that first two lines of this line, can you see this initiation, this total beginning of the 12 archetypes through Aries? You see where this comes from. Looking at not just the modality, but also active polarity and fire element. Let's go. So we can understand how that Aries energy is such an enthusiastic, racing ahead all over the place. So this is cardinal fire. And what we get then with Aries is a certain amount of impulsiveness, acting upon primal instincts, including the sexual instinct. Ruler Mars gets involved here. We've come to know Mars as being masculine, as being Venus-Mars, the pair that, will deal with a lot of sexuality. But it comes through the Aries archetype with or without a planet, the planet Mars being in Aries. That Aries energy, because it is so instinctive and it is so initiatory and excitable, what happens is there is a cardinal action, and then there's learning through the reaction. If anybody knows someone with very strong Aries or first house or Mars energy in their chart, you can talk to them till you're blue in the face. But they have just got to have that experience, that action. They've got to be able to initiate that way and then learn through the experience of the initiation. Aries, through that cardinal modality, becomes very strong at being able to focus on themselves. They can be so self-focused that they can become the loner. They can become all on their own, isolated. They can initiate. They can just go out there charging forward, and they don't even turn around and look to see if anybody's behind them. They're just following through on that instinct to just go out into the world and act and do and see what happens. We will also find that this archetype then, through the cardinal modality, comes in with a very strong will and a strong desire nature. And this is where you get that Aries wants its freedom so that it can move, act, move forward in any way that it wants. And when it runs up against the reaction, something else out there in the universe, they can get quite impatient and angry at anything they perceive to be limiting them, be it another person, that Libra polarity, or be it a situation, be it a work environment, be it just some physical thing. You know, Aryan energy can get frustrated when the body doesn't move like it wants it to move, because that there's so much energy contained within this Aries archetype, and especially with that cardinal modality to move forward. Aries that get frustrated at their own physical body when it doesn't do what they want it to do. And all of us come, all souls come in with the container that we call the body or the spiritual temple. And one of the things that has to happen with the Aries archetype through this cardinal energy is running up against that limitation of you can only do so much. You can only go so fast. You can only go so far forward before you've got to integrate, before you've got to slow down and see what it all means and what's it all about. I did put a line in on just a few distortions that can come with this archetype. I think that the words are probably going to be pretty self-explanatory for everybody, in that when this Aries Mars first house archetype, when it runs into these limitations, there is that energy that can condense down into what we would know as violence. The warrior. You can now see where some, again, the root behind the words, the archetype behind the words. We will find defensiveness in this archetype as well, because they're out there initiating so much that the world comes back to them, and they want to defend what they've initiated. They want to defend how they're moving forward. They want to defend their own directions and actions and ideas. Questions with anything that I am saying up until this point? Again, when looking at it this way, what I'm trying to do is just really concentrate on archetypes that will relate to this cardinal modality, so that you really can picture this through Aries, Mars, and first house. Now, I have a chart example for each of the 4 modalities, and I've brought up the whole chart. And of course, we'll have all kinds of other things that can start to come through for us. But based upon this, I would now like to have you just look at, certain aspects through these chart examples as we go through them. I decided to use well-known charts so that we would all have a bit of environmental conditioning. And I just happened to go through and say, let's use the entertainment industry. So we're going to have actors as our example here, or musicians, or somebody who is, out there in that world that's pretty well known. In this case, what we're looking at here is a chart for Meryl Streep. And anybody who's listening, June 22nd, 1949, 8:05 a.m., Summit, New Jersey, and this chart has a 2 degrees 45-minute Leo rising. So looking at this archetype of Aries, I see two areas where it is an example. First of all, she is a first house Pluto. She is an Aries soul. And in EA, we look at Pluto as the soul and the house it's in with its natural sign, first house Aries. So we have an Aries soul here. We also have a north node in Aries up there in the 10th house as well. And as a matter of fact, we've got a fair amount of cardinal archetypes in this chart. I think most of the charts that I've got 4 examples, chart examples, and I think all of them came up with a lot of cardinal energy. And so, you know, we can come back to this chart and look at other things in it as well as we blend in the other modalities if you want. But look at what we know of Meryl Streep. She took up acting very young. First house Pluto, Aries soul, and she was successful with it right off the bat. And as a matter of fact, she's had more Academy Award nominations than other male or female actor in history. And she's also had more Golden Globe nominations than any other male or female actor in history. And she is known, now you're going to start to see other things in the chart. You know, she's also well known for just taking on such a wide variety of roles in her movies. And in the midst of taking on all those roles, she is known for taking on all kinds of accents. When I was looking up some background information on her, I think there was, I don't remember. I don't think I put this in my little notes here, but, you know, same thing with all her award nominations, more accents in her roles than any other actor out there as well. That is that first house Pluto, that Aryan soul energy, just going out there and trying on a new role, trying on a new accent, trying out something new, not being afraid to just go out there in all levels and just throw caution to the wind and do it. Many of you might be familiar with some of her roles. Mamma Mia, the singer, was probably one of her most recent ones. But taking on Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, I remember watching her years ago in a movie in which she played an African mother who was accused of murdering her child when took place in Africa, and the dingoes got the child, and later later in life was acquitted. It was a real life story, and Meryl Streep played that role.
Kim, wasn't she also recently in this Ken Burns Roosevelt piece depicting or being the voiceover for Eleanor Roosevelt?
Yes, she did Eleanor Roosevelt. Yes, this Ken Burns series that we just had a couple of weeks ago, Meryl Streep did the voice of Eleanor Roosevelt, who was she wrote the Charter of Human Rights for the United Nations. The United Nations came about after World War II, and Eleanor Roosevelt, I got to see the last 2 episodes, so this is what I remember. She was very instrumental in that. And so taking on all of these different accents, all these different roles, that is some of that, just that Aryan pioneerism, the initiator, the crusader, I'm going to go forward and do it. Now, I also saw that Sun-Uranus conjunction up there in the 12th house in Cancer. You know, look at that, just 1 minute off being, I mean, that in astrology, that is called combust. And so I saw that as part of the rule too here. And the ability to take on the acting, that's known with the 12th house, the ability to take on just the intelligence to intuit all those roles. So I'm not saying that this first house Pluto is the only place where this archetype is coming from. You also see that North Node in Aries is up there in the 10th house. This is almost a woman who's been fearless in her career and fearless into trying something new and going forward in new directions. One of the things you will notice with the Cardinal archetype is it will bring in some of the gender stuff as well. And she is a very, very strong supporter of women's empowerment issues. Empowering women, that is one of her, what you would say, social causes, or what she ways that she has donated money to people. And she donated her entire fee from the Iron Lady. It doesn't say how much, but she donated her entire fee from the Iron Lady, which was Margaret Thatcher, that movie, to the National Women's History Museum. So again, not only just such an initiator in her work and her career, but also in her support of women, feminism, female empowerment. Questions or comments? Anybody else see something with what I'm saying that they want to share before we move on? Let me take a drink quick. So we're getting an idea here of that Aryan archetype with the cardinal modality. Fearless, moving ahead, crusader, initiating everything, and just being almost boundless energy for the most part. So you can look at where you have Aries on a house cusp in your own chart, and you're going to find that energy. You can look and see if you've got any planets in the first house. That's going to provide energy. You look at the sign on your ascendant. In Merle's case, you will see hers is 3 degrees Leo. That's going to be given that Aryan instinctive action, how you initially react to anything in your environment. In Meryl Streep's case here, if we put Leo on the cusp of that first house, it's going to emphasize even more the drama trauma, you know, where the Leonian aspect of doing everything in very grandiose ways. And you will also have the archetype of Mars. And now you can look at this cardinal modality through its relationship with that Mars energy and see how, even as Mars is colored by a sign and a house, there's still that initiation. There's still that boundless energy to move forward. And it's just going to be tempered by a sign and a house. In Meryl Streep's case here, you could argue that you have, with Mars and its conjunction to Mercury in Gemini, there could be another theme of this ability to take on all these different accents in the roles that she does. When she did the bridges of Madison County, she had to take on a Polish accent, and she had all kinds of acclaim at how well she could do that Americanized, because the woman was, I mean, it took place in Iowa. You could also, see again more with that 11th house role to that Mars Mercury as well, with that ruler Uranus conjunct the sun so tight. So not only do we have all this cardinal energy, it's it's an it's an intelligent energy as well. All right.
And
Moving forward here.
yet, Kim, I just wanted to add, it seems like
Yes.
there's a certain amount of emotional intelligence there too when you have Cancer in the 12th. And that really, to me, underpins a lot of her success in her craft is, we connect with Meryl Streep on emotional levels. At first glance in this chart, you see a lot of air, you see a lot of fixed energy. If it wasn't for that Cancer in the 12th, you could certainly see an entirely different manifestation. But to me, that's really the gift that a lot of us connect with through her work.
Yeah, like I said, it seems my chart examples here, they all came up with a lot of cardinal energy, and so I was kind of going back and forth as to which examples should I use them as.
Right.
We can use multiple examples, and so yes, we're all able to emphasize with all of that emotional energy there that you see in Cancer and the 12. But as I thought about it, not to say that I agree with everything you said, Leroy. I just thought she's such a pioneer in the whole world of acting, because she doesn't follow the typical Hollywood lifestyle. She lives in the Northeast. She doesn't follow, 10 gazillion surgeries and skinny as a board. You're seeing her actually, look like a real woman. And I think I read somewhere at one point that I think she's one of those who, again, does not do the surgeries to, keep yourself looking like you're 25 all the time. And so I just really felt that first house Pluto as I was looking at her chart for a while, and all that Aryan initiating energy to just charge forward and do her own thing. That's the Aries level of leadership and initiation. But yes, we're seeing all the other stuff as well, and we're also seeing that South Node in Libra in the 4th. There's another cardinal archetype, and one that we pick up on and relate to and draw that Neptune in as well. So let's look at this cardinal modality through Cancer. And here again, what we are starting to bring into this picture is the fact that we're looking at passive polarity and the element of water. And so again, passive polarity is yin, or inward energy moving inward. And yet we've got that cardinal modality of initiating action. And so this cardinal archetype, Cancer, can you now see the push-pull? And that is going to come through the temperament or element of water. So the push-pull of the water. So what we have here is cardinal energy that is dampened or influenced or tempered by the emotions. So it's not going to be as moving forward out there as Aries is, which was active polarity, cardinal modality. Here we've got to blend in that passive polarity and do it through water. So now can you see how this archetype of Cancer has all that, what we in EA call that emotional cycling between withdrawal and animation. And withdrawal is where we're trying to figure out what triggered us, the source of our emotions, and animation is when we want to go out there and be active with the emotions. That's that passive polarity, cardinal modality. And what will happen then with this Cancer archetype many times is we have insecure initiations. Traditional astrology would use the archetype of the crab for Cancer, and the crab never walks in a straight line. It zigzags. It goes in all kinds of meandering directions. And so there's the initiation, but what comes here, and again, bringing in that water element, is now we're initiating by the feelings and the emotions. Can you also see now with the ruler, the moon, all right, how this Cancer archetype and how it relates to our self-image and our emotional self-reliance? Can you see how this is always changing? Here's how that modality comes in with the passive polarity and that continual change. Just stop for a moment and think of yourself today, because you're all going to have Cancer on a house cusp. You're all going to have a fourth house, and you're all going to have the moon. So think about how your own self-image just in this last day has been all over the place. Happy, sad, insecure, peaceful, everything that's going on. There's how that initiatory cardinal energy is starting to operate with this archetype. And of course, one of the things that we will look at with this archetype is the fact that the Cancer archetype is so relative to the early environment. And did we create inner security? Did we have an early environment where we felt safe, where we bonded with the parents, so that we could then move forward with who we are and how we see ourselves? If we did not have that safe early environment, if we did not create inner security, then we've got that insecurity. And so then it creates the fear of moving forward. And what happens is, because it's the cardinal modality, we've got to move, we've got to act, we've got to do. So there will be pressure that builds up, and it'll be emotional pressure that builds up with the water element, and we have to get it out. We have to get those emotions out. We have to move forward. We can't stay stagnant. We can't stay passive. It's got to interact with that initiatory cardinal energy. Now, I thought this was a good one here. If you look at this Cancer energy, think of the mama bear, or think of the mother protecting a child. When a mom feels the offspring threatened, all of a sudden, boom, they can get so aggressive and protective, and you wondering, whoa, where did that come? That is that maternal instinct to just, there's no thought. You just act. And again, see that deeper understanding of that through this cardinal modality. They might fall apart afterwards, but in the moment, the maternal instinct, that will just, it'll act. It just acts and it will think later. Now, some of the distortions that will come from this Cancer archetype through this modality is, again, we can have extreme insecurity. That's where that anxiety comes from, because we don't feel a foundation underneath us as we're trying to figure out how to move forward. You can have all the moodiness and all the extremes of emotions that can also take place. And through this cardinal modality, you can have this archetype going along and poof, something triggers it. And then poof, emotions all over the place. And those emotions, again, are what's leading us through how we act, how we initiate. So there needs to be a continual initiation of how we are going to move forward as we are moving through our environment, as we grow up, as we evolve, as we are needing to move through the world and interact with it. So you can see that that cardinal energy is not quite as out there with Cancer or the fourth house or the moon, but it's still there. And it's there because it has us still, again, moving forward through the early environment, through the emotions, through the world. And so, moving along then with some example here. This chart is for Tom Hanks. And for those who are listening, he's July 9th, 1956, 11:17 a.m. He was born in Concord, California, and his ascendant is 21 degrees Virgo, 45 minutes. And when I thought about Tom Hanks, he just, you look at him as an actor and he is like mom and apple pie. Yes, we feel that way about Meryl Streep as well, but Tom Hanks, he's just like the good buddy. You get warm and fuzzies around him. And I thought, look at that sun in Cancer. Mercury's in Cancer. Look at it up there. They're also in the 10th house, so we have a double cardinal archetype there. But looking at that Cancer energy, it's out there in the world. He is a good family man. He did come up through divorced parents when I was looking a little bit at some of his history. His mother, his mom and dad divorced, and his dad remarried. And so he had older siblings, younger siblings. He went into theater early on and dropped out of college, and pretty much like Meryl Streep, is someone who can do a lot of different acting. He was raised with Catholicism and Mormonism, and he broke out of both of those, and has been criticized for criticizing Mormonism. But he is a very strong family man. He has too been married for a long period of time to the same woman, which isn't always the norm in Hollywood. So that Cancer right there is with his Sun and Mercury. It's a very interesting blend of having to put your emotions out there, not just on the stage, but also off the stage. He is a nice, likable guy. Everybody says that about him as a person, in addition to being an actor. And so, even though he had parents that divorced, he in some way had to have um, a more or less healthy early environment, because he is someone who is, for the most part, very emotionally stable. You don't hear you don't hear a lot of I don't think I've ever heard a scandal about him. He's just always been, again, good old mom and apple pie. Now, looking at that Cancer archetype coming through the 10th house here, he's been pretty politically active. He's well known for supporting the Democratic Party and being a very enthusiastic supporter of um, President Obama. He also, if I'm remembering correctly, hold on, let me check my notes here. He is a very strong proponent of environmentalism. He is a very strong proponent of gay rights. So bringing in the gender that can start to come from the Cancer Capricorn polarity. He's been very supportive of that. And so there's some of that Cancer energy initiating and coming out and leading, as we'll see when we look at the cardinal archetype of Capricorn 10th house, of, being strong enough to take a stand, to lead, to initiate. And yet, through Cancer, he does it in a very soft, pleasing way. He's not doing it the Aries archetype in your face. He's doing it in the Cancer archetype of a more gentle way of being a leader or being an initiator in those types of ways. So again, Cancer as the archetype, as a cardinal archetype, isn't going to always be flamboyant. It will probably do it a little more quietly unless you've got some mitigating factors there. But it will still move forward somehow, some way. He's got Cancer on the 11th house cusp, and so that might be an indicator as well of him being more forward thinking with the gay rights issues and being more understanding in those issues as well. Cancer as an archetype can also be related to the environment. It's one of the archetypes that can relate to the environment or relate to Gaia, our Earth Mother, as an archetype as well. And again, he is a strong advocate for the environment and for protecting Mother Earth. So there's that cardinal initiatory protecting energy beyond just, home and family. He's taken it to the ultimate and using his position, Sun Cancer 10th, to really be protective on the broadest scale possible. Mother Earth. Comments or questions from anybody before we move on? And I'll look at my time. I'm doing pretty good. Well, I think we'll be just fine.
Do you want to take a little time and take a break and get a drink of water, Kim, while I launch a poll? Would everybody out there want to participate in a short poll? This might.
Roy made a poll. Oh, I didn't know that. What's the poll?
I don't know. Let's see it. Let's see if everybody out there is paying attention. I'm going to go ahead and launch this, and hopefully everybody can see that on their screen now. So let's see if everybody's still paying attention out there, and I'll give everybody just a moment to get their response in. The cardinal modality expresses itself most naturally through, select one of the following now: the planetary rulers, each of the 4 seasons, cardinal modality expresses through its mouth, or perhaps the Pope.
Well, Leroy, that's excuse me for laughing.
All right. I hope our listeners everybody can see that and react to it. Let's go ahead and give them a few more minutes to. Nearly 2/3 of the people have voted now, so we're doing good.
This is my third house Pluto partner.
Well, I have an ulterior motive with this poll.
Okay.
And it is going to be an understanding based upon the subject tonight, the cardinal modality. Okay, nearly everybody's. I'll just a couple more minutes here. All right. Well, which would you say it is, Kim Marie?
I can't see it on my screen. I got distracted by your answers. I got distracted by your choices. I don't even remember what the question was.
It's kind of a trick question. All right, so I'm going to close the poll now, and we'll share some results.
Leroy, as I go back to the next archetype, Mr. T just came home, so can I have you come up and close the kitty door and feed him, and you know what to do.
Sure. Anyway, the answer I was looking for is number 2, each of the 4 seasons. I guess there's a reason why the cardinal modality, think of the solstices and the equinoxes, of course. That's what I was hoping to instigate in terms of my own cardinal effort here tonight, is to relate the cardinal modality to the 4 seasons. Did our
listeners get it? Did you get it, everybody?
Well, most people,
I can't see the poll.
Most people, 83% chose the planetary rulers, 17% each of the 4 seasons, and the Pope did not get a count here, or its mouth did not get a count. So I'm glad that we at least narrowed it down. But I thought that was an interesting aha for me, is relating. Of course, the cardinal point is the Aries point, isn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna mute myself and let you get back on track. I thought I'd give you a little break, and I'll go check Mr. T.
All right, thank you very much. And before you go, can you see my screen? Just to make sure that the poll closed and people can see the screen. I think you muted yourself, but can you? I just want to double check. Can you see my screen?
Yep, and everybody seems to be okay. If anybody cannot see the screen, shoot me a quick Q question on the board, please. But you look fine. Good to go, Kim.
Okay. All right. Thank you for taking care of Mr. T. Mr. T's name, by the way, is Taro. He's our grandpa kitty, and all my cats were strays. And when he came into my life, he's a black and white. I've had him now for 15 years, and he was an adult when I got him. And I just observed him for a while because I had no idea when his birthday was, and I was having trouble coming up with a name. And as I was observing him, I thought, you really act like a Taurus. And so I did a play on it and named him Taro, Tauro. And over the years, it's gotten shortened to Mr. T. And the whole neighborhood knows him as Mr. T because he's very laid back and friendly. But that's the fixed modality next week. Moving on, when we look at Libra archetype through the cardinal modality, we're going back to mixing it up with the active polarity, energy moving outward from the center, and the element of air, which is the mental temperament. And so here with Libra, we have cardinal energy that gets stirred up and circulates. Just look at that. Active polarity, cardinal modality, air element. Energy is stirred up, circulating, moving around. So we all know how Libra initiates the second half of the zodiac. And so the first half is self, the second half is the other, and it starts with relationships outside of ourself. And so relationship initiations come with this archetype. Initiating our relationships moving together and initiating relationships moving apart. And if I have done anything watching the Pluto and Libra generation, those who've been with me and heard me over the years, you know, this is a generation that moves in and out of relationships. My joke is the Pluto and Libras, many of them change relationships like they're changing their underwear. That's that cardinal energy, and especially mixed up with the active polarity that is just, well, let's try the next one. Well, let's try the next relationship. Well, let's try the next relationship. And so you can see how that energy just kind of goes from one relationship to the next. What can happen here, though, is with this archetype and the active polarity is sometimes they're just changing to change. They can become so chameleon-like that, you know, they're just initiating relationship stuff all over the place and not taking into consideration that Aries polarity of, well, what about me? I need to take action for myself as much as I do the relationships that I've involved with. And so this Libra archetype has got to learn how to activate that cardinal modality as to in relationship to who they really are versus, well, I'm going to do this because everybody else is doing it, or I'm going to be this way so somebody will like me. They've got to learn how to initiate according to what is right for them. Now, this Libra archetype will also, cardinal modality, active polarity, air element, talk, 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 talk. How many times have you been in conversations with somebody who has a lot of Libra energy and you need to get to the point where you just actually cut them off? I have a female friend in my life. We've known each other for years, long time, and I have to be careful about when she has a gazillion planets in the seventh house. And I have to be very careful when I get on the phone with her because she thinks nothing of having a 3-hour phone conversation. And so I literally start the conversation with, I have 5 minutes. I have 15 minutes, and put a time on it because this cardinal modality with the air element just starts going all over the place. Talk, 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 talk. I've also noticed sometimes if I draw in a client who has a 7th house Pluto or lots of planets in Libra, you know, lots of aspects to Venus, I sometimes just have to cut them off. You're paying me to listen to you speak. Do you want to hear what I have to say? Or I literally have to just, you know, again, cut them off. I actually had one client who was such an extreme of that This client used to come to my house. They moved and they contacted me, I think they put in 3, 4, 5 voicemails, and I just didn't call them back. Finally, I answered the phone, and they were coming through town and they wanted a session, and I was very blunt and direct and said, I can only have you come to the house if you are willing to show up and leave within 60 minutes. I used to schedule people behind you because I could never get you out of the door. So that Libra archetype with that cardinal, they'll change the subject and they'll change the subject and they'll change the subjects, but they just keep going. And so that cardinal energy is sometimes, again, what it does is it's getting into that distortion of neediness and enmeshment, and it can't hold the healthy boundary. And so this cardinal energy sometimes needs to learn how to initiate being alone, when to be alone and when to be with someone, and having a balance with that, when to talk and when to listen. And so when that Libra archetype is evolving from consensus, individuating, and spirituating, when that Libra archetype is evolving, when they can have that healthy boundary between themselves and another, when they can listen as much as they talk. And that Libra archetype, when it's really evolving, that psychology of listening becomes excellent. And so that cardinal energy learns to intuit, again, when to speak, when to listen. So another one of the distortions that have come through this archetype is where that cardinal energy will project out there expectations of what they want to receive back from someone. And they'll go through the disappointments when their expectations or their projections are not followed through, don't come to happen. So this cardinal energy blends with that air element, and now you can start to see the mental that's in here. And you can see how it's active. But again, one of the basics that you're going to look at with this cardinal modality of Libra is an ability to initiate when to be with someone, when to be alone, and having a healthy balance or boundary with that. Now, my example here is going to be another actor, as I've said. Oops, excuse me, hit my microphone. Sorry about that. Another actor, but we're not only going to look now at this Libra archetype, we're also going to look at the Aries archetype again as well. As a matter of fact, this is Leonardo DiCaprio's chart, and he has a very strong T-square in cardinal signs and cardinal houses. And first house Pluto, like Meryl Streep. For listeners, the birth date is November 11th, 1974, 2:47 a.m., Los Angeles, California. And Leonardo's chart has a 3 degrees Libra 7-minute rising. Now, those of us in the astrology world, his nickname is Leo, so if you were thinking he was a Leo, sorry to disappoint you. I guess the story goes, as I did some of my note research, his parents were in Paris looking at something by Leonardo da Vinci, and she was pregnant, and the first time he kicked, they were looking at something by him, and therefore the Leonardo, he was named after Leonardo da Vinci. Parents divorced when he was very young. He was raised by his mother, didn't have a father in his life, was an early childhood actor living in that Southern California area. I think he ended up doing a lot of TV commercials, and then was discovered fairly young in television, and then broke out with Johnny Depp in playing a handicapped child with What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I remember watching that movie, Dysfunctional Iowa Family. But his real breakout, of course, was when he did Titanic with Kate Winslet. How many times have each of us watched Titanic? Apparently he did not want to do the movie, and oh gosh, what's his name? James Cameron. He also did the Avatar, James Cameron. What was he, director? I think it was. Anyway, Titanic was the highest producing movie of all time up until Avatar overtook it. James Cameron talked Leonardo into taking on the Titanic role as the young male who drowned, and of course, then we all knew him as an actor. So what we have here is the Libra rising, and of course, as you can see, 4 planets. Pluto 8 Libra, Moon 16, and both Uranus and Mercury at 29.5, 29.75 Libra, but they're all in that first house. On a romantic level, DiCaprio is known for dating models, and I don't think he's ever been married, and he seems to go through relationship after relationship after relationship with models. There you're seeing that cardinal blend of all that Libra in the first house. Start, stop with relationships. He also is a strong environmental advocate. He's in process of building an eco resort. He donated $1 million to Haiti after its earthquake, and he donated $1 million to the Wildlife Conservation Society. And so he is a very good donator of funds to any of his causes that he believes in. As with Tom Hanks, he also is a strong supporter of the Democrats and Barack Obama especially. So what I see here with this chart is, again, that breakout Titanic role, the love affair, the love affair cut short. In that movie, I still remember their names, Jack and Rose. Leonardo and Kate Winslet, would they know each other? 2 days, 3 days? No, I don't even think it was 2 days before I think it was like 2 days and the ship sank. And so, here's that role there playing the lover, Libra, the star-crossed lovers, Libra, the short-term relationship in the movies, Libra, Aries, and then in real life, those Libra parents in the first house, again, that Aries energy is having a strong effect on the Libra, and they're both cardinal energy. And so in relationship, out of relationship, in relationship, out of relationship. My notes didn't say, and all these notes are coming from Wikipedia if you're interested. It's a great place to find out information these days. The notes never said who broke up the relationships, but if I would look at this chart, I would say it has got to be this guy. And to have the cardinal T-square. So if you're looking here at all of these Libra planets, across from that you're seeing a Chiron in Aries in the 7th house, and in a T-square with that you're seeing Saturn up here, Cancer in the 10th house. So again, his parents broke up when he was like only 1 or 2 years old, and he was raised by his mother. I don't know details on the father. So all of that cardinal energy is bringing a lot of change in his early environment. I don't know if he did have a nurturing early environment. If he was raised by his mother, chances are that's probably so. I don't think they had a lot of money. I think she had to work quite a bit to raise him. And I'm going to guess that he probably takes care of his mother very well now. I remember reading something, I don't remember the details about that. So I would say that with Chiron over here in Aries in the 7th house, there's wounding in relationships here. So he keeps initiating relationships. But I'm guessing that something happens. There's a strong need for freedom here for this Libra soul. So we initiate relationships, but we also initiate our way out of them. And he is struggling to learn a balance here. And so in this Saturn signature, Cancer 10th house, I'm seeing that mom has had to take both roles, mother and father. And it's quite possible, I'm just guessing here, it's possible that if mom had to take on all the responsibility for raising him, perhaps he has a very strong mother. And so there could be a love-hate here with strong women. I want him, but they clamp down on me. And so this Libra energy here is pretty tempered by all of this T-square in cardinal signs and houses of what's going on. Perhaps it is giving that Libra energy an ability to remember I was saying earlier there has to be a balance between time alone and time with others. I would say that this is a soul who can be alone by himself and be okay. He's just bought some island out. I don't know where Belize is. That's the island. Am I guessing? I don't know where it is. I better not say where it is. I'm guessing the Caribbean, but I don't know. But he bought an island in Belize, and he is creating an eco-friendly resort for it. And so I would say that, he goes back and forth between balancing that being alone and being in relationship. And the relationship gets too intense and he's got to pull back and he's got to be alone again. And then he gets lonely and he initiates another relationship. And then it gets too intense and he goes back to be alone again. When you see all this Libra energy in the first house, that right off the bat is going to tell you that there's relationship karma here. I want my freedom and I want my commitment. And he's got to learn how to have that balance within himself before he's going to be able to create it outside of himself. Anybody else comments or questions with anything that I'm saying and using him as an example?
Belize
Again,
is
lots of cardinal energy going on here. What?
Just on a program note, Belize is actually in Central America, northeast coast of Central America, Guatemala area. And there are islands included in the, offshore, but it is basically Central America.
All right, well, I wasn't too far off. I've heard of it, but all of a sudden I realized I didn't know where it was.
Yeah, it's the Caribbean.
Comments, questions, anything you're seeing as you look at this, Leroy? Now he muted himself already.
Well, it does seem, with the information that we've been looking at, he does seem to burn through a significant amount of partners, and
Mm-hmm.
and you can certainly correlate that to the chart easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a sexual magnetism, all that Scorpio in the second. It's probably been not a big issue for him to attract.
Yeah, you can see the Scorpio in the second, but you also have a Libra rising and you have all that Libra energy in the first house. And so, yes, that can be some of the magnetism. And Mars in Scorpio, yes, definitely can put some of that across. And he has a tendency to, I guess some of the movies or roles that I've seen him in, he comes across as quite enthusiastic. For those of you, if any of you saw the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, it's a 3-hour movie. We catch up with movies in the wintertime on DVR, and we did watch that one, and just the Libra extremes and over the top in the role that he played there in that movie. And he had love affairs in that movie. I think he had 2 or 3 partners before he I think ended up with one. And so just a little over the top
Mm-hmm.
in everything. And so that's that Libra cardinal energy just getting stirred up all over the place.
Well, that ruler of all that Libra, of course, is that a balsamic conjunction to the sun in the second?
No, it's new
New
face.
phase, new phase. So he is initiating. He is
It's
initiating.
yeah, that Venus is new face, the sun. Yeah, that's a good point when you look at that. The ruler of Libra and that outer side of Venus. I mean, to me, that just adds to some of that emotional intensity that he has. He's also taking on some intense roles. He was in The Departed and Inception. Wasn't he in the movie
Sure,
in Inception
that was a
as
psychological
well?
thriller. Yeah.
Where there was the time travel. That's kind of pretty initiatory doing it that way. And in that, in Inception, every time they moved back, time slowed down. They moved back another layer, time slowed down from what I'm um, remembering with that. And so, again, that was taking on a different role that hasn't been the norm, and it did very well. I enjoyed that movie as well. But again, so Libra, the initiation through relationships and how we work with that. Okay, one more archetype, everybody, if you're hanging in there with me. We're going to look at the last of the cardinal modality, and here we have Capricorn. And so here again, the passive polarity, which is energy moving back to the center, and the element of earth, which is the physical. So just like Cancer, where we had a passive polarity and a cardinal modality, which would go back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. Whereas with Cancer, it was water and emotions. Here it is earth and physical. So here the cardinal energy is calmed down. It gets a steadier focus to it. This is the last of the 4 cardinal modalities. And so there's is almost what you could call an accumulation of the cardinal modality here. And so you blend that with the earth element passive modality, and the steadiness comes down to, here's how I'm going to act. I'm going to have purpose to how I'm going to act. So you can start to see how this cardinal modality then, the leader, the manager, the one in authority, the need to take charge and be in charge. So all of the initiation is around that outer authority and outer security. If we look at it from a little bit of a deeper level, what comes here though is cardinal modality, in which there is self-discipline, taking charge of one's own life, self-responsibility, taking charge of one's own actions, self-determination. The self-discipline part of it is where that cardinal energy is going to initiate actions to create, to accumulate, to
manifest Earth.
create that, to manifest. Yes, that was it. That's what I'm looking at. And so look at Pluto and Capricorn as a transit, and look at how all of us are having to take this cardinal modality with Pluto and Capricorn and find the self-discipline to manifest what we want in our life with resources, Earth, what we want with career. All of us are learning to operate in this cardinal modality to move forward on deep soul levels in our physical world. On a natural expression or more positive note with that cardinal modality here through Capricorn, you can find that this archetype can be a motivator for other people. It can be inspiring to other people. I want to do what they're doing. I want to create what they're creating. And that healthy Capricorn archetype will go out there and actually help others do that. So that healthy Capricorn archetype will go out there, and it will manifest new things. It will manifest new social structures. Just look at Uranus in Aries now, cardinal archetype, waxing square to Pluto in Capricorn, cardinal archetype. Look at the social structures that are being collapsed all over planet Earth as we're moving forward to create new ones. Whether we are doing it in, the United States with a political system, eventually, it's still in collapse mode in my world. Whether we're looking at it through, Hong Kong and the umbrella revolution and how so much of the youth there are standing up to Beijing and wanting more autonomy. And, our youth did it through Occupy Wall Street for a little bit. Let's see if they come back around in the next election cycle. Unfortunately, I don't know if our youth is hurting hard enough. We've got the Capricorn squares to the Pluto and Libra generation. We've got the Uranian oppositions to the Pluto and Libra generation. So these Pluto and Libras at some point have got to start, taking a stand and initiating the changes of these social structures. Stay tuned. There will be more of that we'll see unfolding. Now, what happens to these distortions here, as you can see, rigid, conforming, controlling. We're very familiar with hearing this through Capricorn, Saturn, and the 10th house, how there can just get this crystallization that'll come along. This is when that passive polarity and the physical of the earth element don't want to be cardinal, don't want to change. But just like Cancer has got to initiate emotional changes, Capricorn's going to have to initiate physical changes. Sooner or later, the structures break down. Sooner or later, the rigidity rigidity and crystallizations, they collapse. The sooner or later, if it's the distortions of leadership and authority, there will be that great fall from grace initiation. So that cardinal modality with the Capricorn archetype is really moving forward in creating new things, or the cardinal modality is bringing the initiations that break it down. It's either initiating to build it up or initiating to break it down, and we could quite easily see both taking place with this archetype. And so, the chart that I have here, we're going back to another female. This one is Shirley MacLaine, and birth data April 24th, 1934, 3:57 p.m. And it is Richmond, Virginia, and her rising is 29 degrees Virgo, 9 minutes. And so here we have another T-square with the cardinal modality. And we also have signs in their opposite houses. And what I was looking at in this chart is the fact that we have a Capricorn soul. We have Pluto in the 10th house. And even though she has Pluto in Cancer as a generation. Now, I thought this was an interesting when I started doing my note research on this chart. When you look at health and wellness astrology and you go from Aries to Pisces head to toe, you look at ankles being ruled by the Aquarius archetype. Capricorn rules the knees, shins are ruled by Aquarius, ankles are ruled by Aquarius, and Pisces rules the feet. Now, she broke her ankles, she broke an ankle at 2 years old, so at 3 years old her mother put her into ballet classes to strengthen her ankles. She worked as a ballerina early on, but she was too tall and she broke her ankle as a ballerina. South Node 11th. Just a side note for you, okay? Capricorn, or excuse me, Saturn in Aquarius. Just want to put that little tidbit in there. Raised by two parents, her younger brother is Warren Beatty, also an actor. Pretty much, I think, a normal childhood. Been married a couple of times. One daughter, not so great relationship with her daughter. The way we know Shirley MacLaine is she's been pretty outspoken in the New Age and metaphysical world. So she dabbles in all of the New Agey stuff, wrote books about it, did a movie about it. I don't know how many books she's written in regards to metaphysics. I think my mother has read every single one of them. My mom loves Shirley MacLaine. I remember when she broke out in 1987 and speaking for metaphysics and the whole harmonic convergence that went on in 87, if you guys remember that. She's not afraid to stick out. I mean, 10th house Pluto, Capricorn, taking charge of one's life. In her case, she hasn't been afraid to stick her neck out, so to speak, in regard to the whole world of metaphysics. Interestingly enough, and I'm not saying I necessarily, agree with this, but I thought that this was an interesting tidbit. Um, she's claimed that in a previous life in Atlantis, she was the brother to a 35,000-year-old spirit named Rantha, who is channeled by the Jay-Z Knight. Any of you who are familiar with Jay-Z Knight and her Rantha channelings out in the Northwest Coast, somewhere around Washington State, I don't remember exactly where. Shirley MacLaine says she was Rantha's brother in a past life in Atlantis. So I'm just sharing that little tidbit. You know, Pluto and Capricorn, we sometimes will think that they'll have the conformity there, but as they evolve, consensus individuating, spiritualizing, what you can find with that a Capricorn soul is they will be a leader. They will be the inspiration. They will be the motivator. And Shirley MacLaine did a whole lot of work in the late 80s of really taking the metaphysical movement and moving it forward out into mainstream. And I remember being an early those are the late 80s was my early days of just beginning to be an astrology teacher. Um, when it was still back in the typewriter days and copier days of making things. But, you know, she was really an initiator out in the world, 10th house, on those levels. And she took a lot of flack for it. Now, the ruler, Capricorn, Saturn, is in Aquarius. And when you put a planet in Aquarius, they can either be defenders of the past, the Saturn Capricorn, or they can be that avant-garde, Aquarius, Uranus, or they can be floating back and forth in between the middle.
With kind of that wide conjunction to the North Node, we probably would guess the latter, right? The avant-garde.
That Saturn in Aquarius for her was the avant-garde. Yes, most definitely. My last of my information, she is said to be having a fantastic time playing an old dame on the Downton Abbey British TV series. I think it's starting season number 4 or 5. I haven't seen it. I have wanted to, and I've kind of wanted to see it now that she's on there. It's gotten such great reviews between haves and have-nots. I just thought it might be an interesting series. I'm trying to talk Leroy into watching it with me. I don't know if he will. But the rest of the T-square, you know, looking in there, you know, pioneer in relationships, Aries 7th house, you know, the Jupiter in Libra first. I know that and she was married a couple of times, but I think that she has been single for a long time. She revealed to Oprah Winfrey that when she was married, 1954 to 1982, with that husband, they had an open-ended relationship, meaning they were both free to have other partners in the marriage.
I think that
Now,
that Jupiter retrograde Libra first is certainly an open relationship.
and opposite you know, Mercury, Uranus, Aries 7th.
Yeah,
I mean,
indeed.
that Jupiter Uranus opposition, you know, really brings that in. She's not the typical Pluto in Cancer generation. But then again, once you go to Hollywood, you know, you really kind of open up to a lot of stuff, I guess I would say,
Mm-hmm.
in regards to that. So the whole point was, though, again, Pluto in the 10th and such an, you know, initiator out in the world in her roles. I don't know a whole lot about all of her movie roles. I didn't have time to read up on all of those, and I'm not familiar. If anybody else is, you can share information. I just remembered her as such a strong initiator of the spirituality, New Age movement.
Well, she put forth a lot of that metaphysics and New Age bent into some of her later roles, particularly. So, the ruler of that Capricorn Pluto is Cancer. That balsamic, that moon balsamic phase
Yes.
to Neptune in the 12th is where all the metaphysics come in. I mean, it's part of her
Yes, you're
soul.
right.
That's part of the
Good one.
desire of her soul.
Yeah. Good one. Good one. Yeah. There's the initiation from the moon.
And one of my favorite
Mm-hmm.
movies was, I don't know if anybody out there saw it, early '90s, Albert Brooks romantic comedy called Defending Your Life. And literally it was about being in purgatory and you have these characters. It was all about this place where you decided whether you're going to go continue on to heaven on the big train, the golden train to heaven, or head on back down to the other direction. And it was very not only humorous, and by the way, Meryl Streep did a starring role, but there was actually a past lives pavilion uh, in that movie. So she was very, again, out there and avant-garde with her metaphysics and belief in reincarnation with a lot of her roles.
What was Shirley MacLaine in that movie?
Yeah, yeah,
Defending Your Life?
yes, yeah,
And Meryl Streep was in that movie?
yep. Albert Brooks starred in the movie with Meryl Streep, and I'm sure Shirley MacLaine was in there
You're
in
right.
the
It's in
past
my
lives
own.
Past
Yeah,
lives
it is.
pavilion.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. I highly recommend that to anybody out there listening. You want to see with a reincarnational story behind it, but a comedy to boot. It's one of the top ones I think I've ever watched.
Defending your life.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that tidbit.
Rip Torn
Very
is another actor in there, played one of the lawyers in Purgatory. And it was just really a great script.
Thank you for that. So, as we start to wind down, looking at how we move through this cardinal modality, you see how it gets blended with the active passive polarities and how we are looking at all four of the elements with this cardinal modality. And so there is this, again, undercurrent running theme of initiation, moving forward, leading edge. And yet we see how it's done through fire with Aries, water with Cancer, air with Libra, earth with Capricorn. Any comments, questions on the cardinal modality or the mode of initiatory actions?
Nothing on the board, Kim, and you covered a lot of information with
Right.
this subject, so it looks good.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for sticking with me. I'm just a little few minutes shy of the 2 hours, so we did good with our information. And Leroy will get the PDF and audio and video files out to you shortly. And I will see everybody 1 week from tonight, same time, and we will look at the fixed modality next.
I just want to remind everybody before you close, Kim, that yes, the PDF with the MP3 download link and the video link on the first page of that PDF will be coming to you via an email from me. You will kind of get to save those to your, I don't know, maybe name a folder on your computer. We We've had a lot of instances where people have neglected to save the PDF. I would strongly suggest you do that for future reference because it does contain all the audio and video information in there as well as all the slides. So you can have that for a future resource. Just on a program note, when you do go to purchase one of these webinars in the future after the live event on the website, that PDF, it does reside on your account pages, but it does not do so here for the live event, so it's kind of encumbers the participant to save the PDF on their own computer, and they have it for perpetuity.
We'll make this announcement at the beginning of class next week.
Let's do that, yes. Nice clarification.
Uh-huh. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next week.